George Washington, the reluctant father of a nation. My name is Edward Collins. I'm a 38-year-old historian from London. For years, I believed I understood the story of America's independence. But recently, while examining letters and forgotten documents in an archive in Virginia, I discovered something extraordinary. I realized that the man known as the first President of the United States, George Washington, was far more than just a political leader. He was a man who never wanted power, but who accepted it because the future of a new nation depended on him. I stared at Washington's farewell address, written in 1796. His words struck me: "The nation's honor is dearer than life." I whispered to myself, was this man truly ready to walk away from power? The answer would challenge everything I thought I knew about leadership. Washington was born on February 22, 1732. On a modest tobacco plantation in Virginia. He wasn't from Europe's aristocracy. He wasn't the richest colonist, or the most educated. His formal schooling ended at age 15, and yet, he carried himself with a sense of dignity that others noticed instantly. By age 26, he stood 6 feet 2 inches tall, a giant for that era. He was strong, athletic, an expert horseman. But what truly set him apart was his character. Discipline, restraint, an almost unnatural ability to control his emotions. When the American Revolution erupted in April 1775, the Continental Congress desperately needed a military commander. The colonies were divided. Trust was scarce. They needed someone who could unite North and South. Someone who inspired confidence. Against his own hesitation, Washington was chosen. He had military experience from the French and Indian War, but he had never commanded an army of this scale. When offered the position, he stood before Congress and said something remarkable: "I do not think myself equal to the command I am honored with." Those words alone showed his character, humility mixed with resolve. He refused a salary. He asked only that his expenses be covered. In a world where generals expected wealth and glory, Washington wanted neither. The war began disastrously. In August 1776, the British routed American forces at the Battle of Long Island. Washington lost nearly 1,000 men. His army retreated across New Jersey, shrinking from 20,000 to barely 3,000 soldiers. Desertion was rampant. Supplies were non-existent. I found a letter he wrote in December 1776. "I think the game is pretty near up." But then came the turning point. On Christmas night, 1776, in a desperate gamble, Washington led 2,400 men across the icy Delaware River. They marched 9 miles through a blizzard. Many had no shoes. They left bloody footprints in the snow. At dawn, they surprised the Hessian garrison at Trenton. The Americans captured nearly 1,000 enemy soldiers without losing a single man in combat. It was a miracle. Morale surged. The revolution had hope again. Yet the darkest hour still lay ahead. The winter of 1777 at Valley Forge nearly destroyed the Continental Army. I visited the site myself. Standing in those Pennsylvania fields, I imagined what Washington witnessed. 12,000 soldiers huddled in crude log huts. No blankets, no medicine, insufficient food. The records show that 2,500 men died from disease, exposure, and starvation that winter. 1 in 5. I read a surgeon's report describing soldiers with feet frozen solid, requiring amputation. Others so weak they couldn't stand. Washington wrote to Congress, pleading for supplies. "Unless some great and capital change suddenly takes place, this army must inevitably be reduced to one or other of these 3 things: starve, dissolve, or disperse." Congress sent nothing. I imagine him standing in the snow, watching his soldiers suffer. Did he doubt? Did he think the cause was lost? But Washington didn't abandon them. He stayed. He reorganized. He drilled them relentlessly under Baron von Steuben's training. And slowly, impossibly, that starving, freezing army transformed into a disciplined fighting force. The war dragged on for 8 brutal years. Washington lost more battles than he won, but he understood something his British opponents didn't. He didn't need to win battles. He just needed to survive. Finally, in October 1781, with crucial French assistance, Washington trapped British General Cornwallis at Yorktown, Virginia. After a 3-week siege, Cornwallis surrendered 8,000 troops. The war was effectively over. Foreign observers couldn't believe it. A ragtag army, led by a farmer from Virginia, had defeated the greatest empire on earth. But what shocked the world most came after the victory. Washington could have crowned himself king. He had the army's absolute loyalty. He had the prestige. Many officers urged him to seize power. A colonel named Louis Nicola even wrote him a letter in 1782 suggesting Washington become king. Washington's response was swift and harsh. "Let me conjure you, if you have any regard for your country, concern for yourself or posterity, or respect for me, to banish these thoughts from your mind." On December 23, 1783, Washington appeared before Congress in Annapolis. He pulled a written speech from his coat. His hands shook so violently that observers said he could barely read the words. "Having now finished the work assigned me, I retire from the great theater of action." He resigned his commission. He surrendered all military authority. He asked for nothing in return. The room fell silent. Some delegates wept openly. A stunned King George III, upon hearing the news, reportedly said, "If he does that, he will be the greatest man in the world." And Washington did just that. He returned to Mount Vernon, hoping to live quietly as a farmer. He wrote to a friend, "I am retiring within myself, and shall be able to view the solitary walk and tread the paths of private life with heartfelt satisfaction." But history had other plans. The new nation was failing. The Articles of Confederation created a weak central government. States quarreled. Trade collapsed. Rebellions erupted. In 1786, Shays' Rebellion in Massachusetts nearly toppled the state government. America was fracturing. In 1787, delegates gathered in Philadelphia to draft a new constitution. Everyone knew that this document, no matter how brilliant, would need something more to succeed: trust. The people needed to trust whoever would lead this experiment in democracy. There was only one man the entire nation trusted. When the Constitution was ratified, there was never any doubt about the first president. In 1789, Washington received all 69 electoral votes. Unanimous. The only president in American history to be elected unanimously, twice. On April 30, 1789, on the balcony of Federal Hall in New York City, Washington placed his hand on a Bible and took the oath of office. He was 57 years old. He looked exhausted. As president, he set precedents that defined democracy itself. He created the cabinet system, appointing brilliant minds like Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton despite their mutual hatred. He established judicial review. He insisted on the title Mr. President rather than Your Majesty or Your Excellency. When farmers in western Pennsylvania violently protested a whiskey tax in 1794, Washington personally led 13,000 troops to suppress the rebellion. It was the first and only time a sitting U.S. president commanded troops in the field, but he didn't massacre the rebels. He arrested the leaders, then pardoned them. He proved the federal government could enforce laws without tyranny. His greatest act came in 1796. After 2 terms, exhausted and aging, Washington announced he would not seek a third term. Nothing in the Constitution required this. He could have remained president for life, but he stepped down. He voluntarily surrendered power. I paused while reading his farewell address. Published in September 1796, it contained 6,000 words of political wisdom. He warned against the baneful effects of the spirit of party. He cautioned against permanent foreign alliances. He urged unity above regional interests. His message was timeless: unity over division, character over ambition. In Paris, a French journalist wrote, "Washington is not just the hero of America. He is the hope of mankind. He has shown that power can be wielded without corruption." In Britain, an astonished member of parliament admitted, "He has set an example which will teach all rulers the majesty of self-restraint." Rome had its Cincinnatus. America has Washington. A Prussian military officer observed, "I have seen many generals, but Washington is the only one who knew when to stop." Washington died on December 14, 1799. At Mount Vernon. He was 67. His last words were, "'Tis well." His funeral was attended by thousands. Napoleon Bonaparte ordered 10 days of mourning in France. The British Royal Navy lowered its flags to half-mast honoring the man who had defeated them. Reflecting on his life, I realized Washington was not the loudest voice in any room. He was not the most brilliant intellectual. He was not even the best military tactician, but perhaps that was his strength. His greatness lay in knowing when to stop, when to let go, when to place the future above himself. He understood that democracy required leaders who would surrender power, not cling to it. As I left the archive in Virginia, clutching my notes, I whispered that is why George Washington was not only the father of America, but the father of modern democracy. The world has seen countless conquerors: Caesar, Napoleon, Alexander. All seized power and held it until death or defeat. Washington seized power and gave it back twice. That, more than any battle won or lost signed, is his legacy. Thank you for watching until the end. Please share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and give us a like.